Testing one two. Testing one two. Testing one two. Brethren, sisters, just a quick but spring. Most schools actually have steel bands. It's on outside supports and
Support the video when called upon.
Which friend?
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the national anthem.
Good evening, everyone. Certainly a privilege to be here. We are the members of the Mount Pisgah Spiritual Baptist Church. And I believe this is our fourth occasion where we have offered prayers on occasions such as this. We consider these things important, especially for us as a race of people who have been disenfranchised throughout our lives. So it is our pleasure to be here. And I now ask Reverend King to offer up prayers unto God.
A pleasant good evening. Father, as we approach your holy throne at this time and hour, this moment in time, this second, Jesus, we come before you, Father, because we're looking in the mirror today, Jesus. We can see ourselves in the mirror today, Holy Lord. And we bring in, Holy Father, our brothers and our sisters. We bring in, Holy Father, our family. The Negro family, Holy Father. That they can see in that mirror, Jesus. Father, but I know, Holy Lord, from his Solomon, Jesus, he says, not the sun has lit upon me, because I'm black and comely. Father, as the descendants of our father David, through Solomon, Jesus, for you yourself, you say you're the son of David. Father, we look to you because we bring out people that are different choice, the people that are scattered and peeled throughout the earth, Holy Father. The Ethiopian sons and daughters, my God, scattered throughout the diaspora, Jesus. So many different tongues, languages, my God. So many different tribes, Holy Father. But Lord, we know that you are one, Holy Lord. Although, Holy Father, we have sinned against heaven, we sinned against thee. But we pray for restoration, Holy Father. We pray that you will come again, Holy Lord, and bring us, Holy Father, and restore us to our former glory, my God. Father, but we need, Holy Lord, the strength of our fathers, the strength of our ancestors, my God, the strength of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the strength of Moses, my God, the murdered Ethiopian woman Zipporah, Jesus. Father, and through the lineage, your children today in this present age, we need the Holy Spirit to come down and keep us in your grace, my God. Because you know, there are many principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world that have kept us, oh God, and prevented us, Holy Father, through that middle passage, my God. Lord, but we know the blood of our fathers still crying from the earthly Abel, Jesus. Lord, and I pray that you will hear our prayers. And as our prayers come up with your throne, Holy Father, we pray that your blessings may come down upon us and help us to rise above every adversity that may come our way, Jesus. As a people, Holy Lord, bind us together in one, Holy Father. Let us have the understanding of unity and love, because this is only the King that will carry us through and bring us, Holy Father, the victory in your holy and most mighty and most precious name. Father, bless, oh God, all who are present. Bless, oh God, those who have arranged the situation, Jesus. Because it is you, Holy Father, that the situation has been created, my God. And I pray you bless everyone, Holy Father, that brought it into fruition, Jesus. And keep your people together. Keep the group together. Let them know that they're standing strong as one. Father, and I pray that your blessings may come down upon your people. Help us to continue to fight the battle and win it in Jesus' name. Because without you, Holy Father, you is the way, the truth, and the life. Holy Father, without you, we are but nothing, Jesus. But we pray, Holy Father, that you continue to remember us in your mercy and your love. And keep us in a oneness that you may continue to grow in your grace. In Jesus' name, I ask these mercies. La la la.
Oh, bing 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 bong, bing bing ba 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 ba, bing 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 ba 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 bong go, bing 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 bong go, bing ba 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 bang, la da 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 da, ba 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 bo, bing ba bo bong bong bong, bing bing ba bang bo, bing ba bang bang bang. Hallelujah, yeah, thank you, Jesus, for the blood you shed for me. Oh, thank you, Lord, my only Savior. Thank you, Lord, for saving me. Because of who we are Africans, and we love to rejoice. We are Africans, and because of this, we love to rejoice. So we're going to sing you some trumpets now, a few, and I'm asking you to be a part of this dance for God. Be a part of the ancestral dance. We have movement in our feet, and we are here to rejoice with you. Africa, Ilua, Africa, Ilua, Ilua, oh Ilua, pray for me, Ilua. from Africa land. Coming all the way from Africa land. Oh, coming all the way, coming all the way. Oh, coming to hear you pray. Coming all. Oh, coming to hear you pray. Coming all the from Africa land. Yes, coming all the way. Oh, coming to hear you. Oh, coming on, coming to hear you pray. Oh, coming on, hello, coming to hear you. Hello, coming on, pray, coming on, from Africa. Yes, coming to hear you. Pray, coming all, coming to hear you. Pray, coming all, oh, coming to hear. Oh, coming all the way. Oh, coming to hear you pray. Coming all the. Oh, coming to hear you. Coming to hear you pray. Mother Africa. Mother Africa land. Mother Africa. Down in Africa land, hear the drums beating. Down in Africa land, hear the drums beating. Down in Africa land, boom boom, bing bing ba boom. Mother Africa. Bing boom, bing boom, boom boom. Oh, down in Africa land, hear the drums beating. Oh, down in Africa land, bing boom, boom boom, bing boom boom, bing boom ba boom, bing boom boom, bing boom ba boom, boom boom boom, bing boom ba boom, bing 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 boom, bing boom boom. Oh, Mother Africa. Down in Africa land, Mother Africa. Oh, down in Africa land. Oh, hear the drums beating. Oh, down in Africa. Bing, 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 bing. Oh, hear the drums beating. Oh, down in Africa land. Bing, 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 bong, bing, ba, bing, bong, bong, bing, bong, ba, bong, bing, bong, bing, bong, ba, bong, bing, dum, dum, dum.
Thank you. It was our pleasure to be here, and we wish you success on all that is done this evening. Unfortunately, we have another function to attend, and we'll have to leave. But nevertheless, we wish you God's blessings through heaven, through the ancestors. And we would say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you very much.
Children, come go to Zion with me.
Thank you very, very much. Travel safely. Now, I know some of you might be wondering of who is that handsome young man speaking to us this evening. My name is Arnold Ward. I'm a member of one of the lodges that are function. Well, only one is putting on this program, but I'm a member of the Grand Lodge. I won't bore you with a long bio. You're going to get a lot of them before the evening is through. So without any further ado, I'll call upon the president of the Cornerstone Club, which is a part of the Cornerstone Lodge number 14, to come and give you a welcome. Please give a round of applause to our president.
Grand Lodge officers, past and present, worship masters, past and present, brothers, sisters, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Brother Lascelles Austin, the president of the New Hope Club. It gives me a immense pleasure to welcome you to our annual Black History celebration here at the NUPW. Black History Month is celebrated by the New Hope Club annually with a lecture or a panel discussions. It represents education combined with social activities after. The club is a charitable organization tasked with raising funds for the mere purpose of dispensing charity. It warms my heart to look up at this evening's gathering and feel the collective energy that sheer eagerness to learn and to engage. What I must tell you is that Black history is not confined to the past. It lives among our culture, our resilience, our achievements, our continued pursuit of justice and excellence. Tonight, or this evening, we must honor that legacy together. We are gathered under a powerful theme, rooted in faith, rising in freedom. These things remind us that our ancestors were anchored by an unshakable faith, a faith in God, a faith in community, and a faith in a future that them themselves might never see. Because of their courage and resilience and the sacrifice, we stand today able to rise in freedom, dignity, and unity. It remembers the faith and freedom and the struggle of our Caribbean ancestors. We recommend ourselves to the New Hope Club to raise in the purpose of unity and hope for the generation to come, reflecting its meaning and recommending ourselves to carry forward. We are honored here this evening to feature a keynote presentation by Dr. Dirk Murray, followed by a panel discussion with one of our own brothers, Brother Ronnie Mears, Brother Matthew Clark, and Mr. Wayne Ward of the Barbados Landship Association. We will also pleased to showcase a powerful spoken words presentation by Mr. Malachi Hope and Timo Howard. There was some disappointment here, sorry to disappoint, but that's in Africa, which is supposed to be on the program, will not be attending due to something beyond our control. So that's in Africa will not be here this evening. So I do apologize and I'm sorry about that. But nevertheless, the show must go on. And I hope that you have enjoyed the musical opening by Spring Memorial School Steve Band for those who were here early, right? And the opening prayers by members of the Most Places Spiritual Baptist Church. So without further ado, I know that you all came here ready to listen to me. Let us settle in, open our minds, and prepare to be inspired. And let us listen attentively, engage thoughtfully, and leave here tonight with a renewed appreciation for the rich and complex history we are about to explore. Again, thank you, and let's have a wonderful celebration and do enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks to to the president of the club, Brother Lascelles Austin. Yeah, we didn't come to listen to him. We came to listen to the worshipful master, Brother Ryan Brewster, who will now come and give you his brief remarks. Let's have a round.
Protocols having been established, good evening, brothers and sisters. No, I'm sure you didn't come here to hear me speak either, so I will make this brief. It is indeed an honor for me to stand before you this evening and to give you a few brief remarks before we get into the real meat of this evening's discussion. In 2007, when Cornerstone Lodge number 14 was under dispensation, the New Hope Club began hosting this Black History Lecture and has become an annual event since then. From its beginning, the intention was clear: to educate, to enlighten, and to preserve the memory of the struggles and the triumphs of our people. It was envisioned as a living testimony where the lessons of history are not merely recounted, but embraced as guides for our present journey and future destiny. We draw inspiration from Prince Hall, the founder of our Masonic tradition and timeless champion for justice. His advocacy for education, equality, and dignity reminds us that freedom flourishes when nurtured by faith, strengthened by unity, and advanced through collective actions. His example is the cornerstone upon which this lecture rests. Through the years, this gathering has grown in stature and reach. We have been blessed by the wisdom of distinguished presenters, including but not limited to leading scholar in cultural studies at the University of West Indies, Dr. Marcia Burrows, noted physician, Dr. Alana Johnson, public health lecturer with the University of the West Indies, Dr. Heather Harewood, past Grand Master, our very own most worshipful Brother James Padmore, Director of the Hybrid Studies and a leading Pan-Africanist, Director of the Center for Hybrid Studies and leading Pan-Africanist, Dr. Derek Murray, who is here with us again this evening, and I know will definitely stimulate a lot of discussion and a lot of thought within us this evening. Also, I must mention Brother Matthew Clark, a noted scholar and researcher. We've also had noted trade unionist Mr. Bobby Morris and celebrated historian the late Trevor Marshall. Each presenter throughout the years has added depth to our understanding and our resolve. The lecture has journeyed from the Prince Hall Temple at Graham Hall to the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union headquarters, to the halls of the University of the West Indies, and now to this lovely venue, the headquarters for the National Union of Public Workers. Each step marks its widening embrace and its deepening impact. This year's theme, Rooted in Faith, Rising in Freedom, is both a declaration and a charge. Rooted in Faith acknowledges the spiritual strength, cultural resilience, and communal solidarity that sustained our ancestors through the centuries of trials. Rising in Freedom affirms that faith must blossom into action, into empowerment, and into building structures that secure dignity and prosperity for generations yet unborn. This theme calls us not only to remembrance but to renewal, not only to reflection but to resolve. For us in Cornerstone Lodge number 14, this lecture is more than just an annual event. It's a continuum and a solemn duty. My hope is that this evening inspires us all to guard our heritage and to confront the forces of dispossession so that we may rise together in the fullness of freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy what promises to be a very entertaining and stimulating evening. Thank you.
Thanks to the President for those wonderful remarks. We'll now have some spoken word by Mr. Malachi Hope. Unfortunately, I don't have information on Mr. Hope, but I hope that he would forgive me for that and don't write a poem about MCs. You need anything?
Hello, my beautiful people. I sorry it starts so late, because I don't even think Timon here as yet. But I do want to share my piece with y'all. My piece is called "The Situation." It goes like this. The situation is getting dire. And while this region is on fire, in shambles, facing terror, facing horrors, total confusion, reaching damnation, you would think that change is coming. Meanwhile, the rich fills their stomach with the most gluttonous intent and dare not repent. And their time spent putting profits before morals and justice leaves us having guns we should have never been able to source or afford. Man, most of the poor could barely afford to bring in a phone, let alone a pistol, so we's got asked, is it negligence or corruption that causes our borders to be open arms for firearms that cause lethal harm that ends up in the hands of minors? Is people like Jonathan Cheers just a case against us being insidious? Or are there people more villainous making plays that lead these boys astray, that lead these men to spray these kids in reckless ways? Do you lack dignity? Or is you desperate? When to put a chainsaw through the people place and beat old men with no disgrace, what more shall we face? I won't be surprised that some get on a plane and leave this place. To think some will tell you stand here with the low pay, high crime rate, poor policing, suffocating taxes, you must be insane. Barbados turn to a violent state. So when people start gunning to the runway or the floodgates that escape this gun game, don't you give them shame. They might be even worthy of praise. As long as they don't run for the saucepan to the frying pan, then everything should be okay. And when I mean saucepan to frying pan, I mean Barbados to USA. You got to be a blind man to not see the state of the states. It seems like everybody fighting, constant conflict, moving irate. I mean, look at Israel, Iran, Sudan, Ukraine. I won't be surprised if next year the world is in flames. So is it really just black men with Glock 9s to blame? If it ain't know any better, I would say this world is inherently a violent place. And if this is the most peaceful we've been in society, then that must be the case. Everything from villages to unions in the arms race. I talking bombastic bombing trade wars, people being misplaced. The situation is getting dire indeed. And I find it concerning that we won't take heed and see the parallels of World War II before we meet World War III. You see, fascism is probably at the highest since Mussolini and the painter. Peter among the people ready to be exterminated, the hide the hands play perpetrator, remove the purple for paper, to turn to a traitor. Genocide seems to be authorized once it comes for the regimes they favor. Education is becoming segregated. Students ignore the blessings because they need paper, and that's no, not later. Because when the oven get hot, you better turn to a baker. So when money need to make, you better turn to a maker, for you end up on the road with no boat to migrate to. So when crime rise, when drugs, gunning, and mugging rise, don't be surprised. The situation is getting dire. People are getting desperate. We got people robbing churches, feeling defeated, thinking depleted. What more can we do? I mean, we God's not working as the earth is burning. How much more will we lose? It feel like everything just seems to be going to the gutter, but maybe I just gone the darkest darker, so it can't see past all the other bull crap. At this point, all they seeing is black, my brother. You think this thing getting drastic? You think we money gonna last it? The way that we want, we stretch it past it last breath. Then when it dead, we can't flex. But as long as the rich cash checks don't care what the staff gets, the situation is getting dire. We got blatant cover-ups of pedophiles and power changing their tune when the song won't play to their desire. They try to put sound on the fire, but they only made the glass that shattered their mass. And know, as the masses peek behind the veil, they too can follow the same trail. And they came to the same conclusion. The situation is getting dire. But by yeah, it's been dire. Way before we even realized the game was being played and that we were being made to be pawns inside of that same game, they were insulting our intelligence right in front of our face. How dare they think we're stupid? How dare they find us foolish? How dare they think making us work more than we think will lead to everyone just falling in line and leaving behind the ideals and empathy that took so long for us to build? Their pressure may be pressing down with the strength of the hydraulic press, causing some people to crumble under their will with nothing but our hands and faith being our saving grace, but by God and by my ancestors. Some will fall, but all can break. And the only thing that I look into break is cycles. The cycle of sweeping this madness under the rug because we feel like we can't fix it. The cycle of watching those in power abuse that power because we feel like we're powerless. This cycle of anxiety, this cycle of crippling depression and poverty, this cycle of yearning and searching for my place in this world that don't seem to be made for those with my mindset. And these is the only things that I hope to break. And I hope I break them before they break me. But I must admit, it feels like they're getting close. Thank you very much.
Oh, instead of Malachi, they should have called him Jeremiah anyhow. It's very, very words well put together, but wow, he really can bring you down, Now we're about to get to the real meat of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like the panel, if possible, to, I don't know, you want to go up and say, introduce you, or you want to just go up and let me introduce you up there, Rich?
I think they should go up after the lecture.
I'm sorry?
We should probably go up after the lecture.
After the lecture? Okay. All right, we'll have the lecture first, and then we will have the panelists going up. As you all know, our distinguished lecturer is Dr. Just give me a second here. Dr. Derek Murray, and for those of you who don't know him, Dr. Derek Murray is the director of the Center for Hybrid Studies, a private Barbados-based agency focused on the hybrid study of Caribbean culture, science, and society. I'm sure he'll be able to explain to you exactly what the hybrid nature means. His research interests include the philosophy of mind, African spirituality, African ways of knowing, reparations, and the construction of power. Apart from supervising postgraduate students, I keep hearing the noise, I don't know why. Dr. Murray is a lecturer and coordinates the Science Foundation course. He's also lectured on gender issues, the history of medicine, and Caribbean civilization. For 12 years, he was the government of Barbados' director for the Commission of Pan-African Affairs. His early community work included managing and serving as lead drummer, believe it or not, for the Powerless Creative Workshop. Dr. Murray is an Orisha priest of 30 years. So now you know a little bit, because I'm sure there's a lot more to his extensive resume. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a welcoming hand to our lecturer, Dr. Derek Murray.
I'll do both.
Oh, okay.
Give thanks to the Spiritual Baptist for that wonderful blessing. Give thanks to the New Hope Club. This is the fourth lecture. I believe it started, Rodney Mears started the confusion in 2014. I think at that time I did the institutionalization of secrecy. And then we did something on African spirituality. And then last year we did something on power. And this year we will look at dispossession. So Ryan spoke about confronting the forces of dispossession, which I intend hopefully to explain to you what those forces are, because you can't confront something that you don't, that you can't identify. I want to recognize the president, give thanks to the New Hope Club. Thank you for this, organizing this and having the vision to recognize. I noticed that we haven't heard of much about Black History Month this year. We were busy electing people and de-electing people. But before I get started, I want to announce something that's more important than anything that we're doing here today, and it is that tomorrow is my birthday. I think that's the most important thing that you should remember. If you don't remember anything else when you leave here, remember that. And
I want you to enjoy your birthday. Happy, happy birthday. Put your two hands up in the air and make some noise for your birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
all right, so to the less important business of how we got to where we are. The title is Keeping Black People Poor and Powerless. And so I want to challenge you to make sure that I meet the mission, that I tell you about why black people are poor, and that I do not forget the powerless part. And so this is serious business because you know, the situation is dire, according to Malachi. And he said that it has always been dire. And so I intend to show you why it has always been dire and why it will continue to be dire unless we understand the forces of dispossession. So this research, what I'm going to present to you, is half of a paper that I wrote for the Prime Minister's office. They wanted a paper on economic enfranchisement. But you can't write a paper on economic enfranchisement if you don't first write a paper on economic dispossession. You first need to understand how you became disenfranchised before you can write about enfranchisement. So this lecture is actually two sections. I'm only going to give you one, the dispossession part, the enfranchisement. You can come next year and hear the second part. So this part, we start with an interesting photograph that I found on the internet. I didn't see the name of the photographer to give him or her the credit, but it is the Concorde flying over a chattel house. This is the Concorde flying over the chattel house. So I was wondering when I heard the theme, rooted in faith and rising freedom, if this is what we were talking about. The people with the faith are in the chattel house, and it's falling apart. And the rising in freedom were the people with the Concords. For a lot of our history, that's exactly as it was. But the reason I chose this photo is for a different reason. It is because, and I'll explain as I go, in order for Concorde to fly, for a plane to fly, for Concorde to be constructed and to fly, I want you to imagine the resources, the networks, the thousands of people involved before that Concorde can leave the tarmac. The network of power that it takes. And I shouldn't say a network of power. The network is the power. And that's how you construct power, through networks. And compare that to the chattel house. What does it take? And that has been the theme for our entire history, because the Concorde is representative of the white elite in Barbados who always had global networks to construct their power, whereas they're intentionally, throughout our history, made sure that our world was smaller and smaller and smaller, and our networks. And I'll show you how they did that. I have to apologize because I know there are historians who do excellent work and lectures and presentations, and they stand and they tell wonderful stories that enthrall people. They can tell stories the whole night, interesting things that happened to us in the past and so on. And that work is important because I draw on that work for my own work. The problem is, I'm a mechanic. I am interested in how the thing works. What apart from the stories, what are the mechanics or the structures that still have us in this position? The downside to that is that it's not as interesting and engaging. Stories are always interesting and engaging. This is almost going to be pure academia. So I am insisting that you stay awake and that you pay attention because the situation there. You need to know these things. So first thing, the aim of this, the work that we do, is really in the end about economic enfranchisement. How do we achieve economic equity for Black Barbadians? And at the Center for Hybrid Studies, we take a hybrid approach. You know, it's like weaving things together. Although weaving is not the best metaphor or analogy because we don't first separate and then weave back together. We try to understand things as they are as hybrid units from the very beginning. The problem with weaving, for the academics in the room, and some of you may be thinking about, he's talking about multidisciplinary work, cross-disciplinary work, bringing together the different disciplines. But that's not what I'm talking about, because the problem is economics has assumptions that they start with, politics has assumptions that they start with, science has assumptions that they start with, and many of these assumptions are incorrect. And when you take these incorrect assumptions and you plait them like a braid, all you're doing is multiplying the wrong assumptions to come up with your solutions. So that's just a bit of the technicalities. And so let's talk about the elements of dispossession. I'm going to go through them very quickly here, but I want you to remember them because I'm going to go through every one of them quickly. And so that you understand that the job that we have, if we're going to talk about stopping Black people from being poor, is not an easy job, and it has to be a job of collective work. So the elements of dispossession, first control, and under control has the question of classification. How do we classify people, and so on. Then there's a spectrum of forces: physical force, sociocultural force, legal forces, knowledge or education, then religious forces. And then we have the issue of movement and communication. So the white planters in Barbados made sure that they control all of those. Then there's the question of power. How do you construct power? I have two headings that you'll understand better later: expansion and reductions. And then how is it that the white community was able to do this for like 300 years? Well, they had centers. There was always a center of, and they call them centers of calculation and control, right? So they're centers of calculation: Parliament first, then the mutual, and now we have this social partnership. So in 1838, you had two white men describing the condition of freed Blacks at the time. And they were saying that the white planters, the white Barbadians, had devised an ingenious system that worked extremely well. And it worked so well, and this is quoting directly from these whites, that no force, I'm trying not to block people, no force of talent nor extent of acquirement could hope to break down the granite walls and iron bars which prejudice had erected round the pulpit, the bar, and the bench. Essentially, they're saying that the way that the planters and the whites had set up the systems in Barbados and the prejudice and racism under it, there were granite walls, nothing could break them. Remember, 1838 is emancipation, right? So you wonder why we were never really emancipated in 1838. So remember this list I gave you. The first was classification. So Europeans have this, this habit. I call it a nasty habit. But it's a habit that not everybody has, which is as soon as they run into a difference, you have two things and they're different. They have the propensity, the habit of making one better and the other one inferior. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can just have two things that are different. And therefore, it's no surprise that when they ran into Africans who were different, they naturally had to, and they had different, what they call races, they naturally have to have a hierarchy. One had to be superior, one had to be lesser than, and the other had to be at the bottom. So it happened that we ended up at the bottom. And they didn't just do that for race, they did it for religions as well. So Christianity was at the top. So if you wanted to be at the very top, you had to be a white Christian man, because they did it for gender as well, right? Women were inferior. So in Barbados, the European settlers reproduced these classifications, embedded racial, social hierarchies in legislation, privileging whites. So listen to this about classification. And the reason I'm going through the trouble of reading these actual words is so that you don't think that historians just get and talk these things. This is from the words of the whites, right, at the time. And what John Poyer is saying is that in every well-constituted society, a state of subordination necessarily arises from the nature of civil government. Without this, no political union could long subsist. To maintain this fundamental principle, it becomes absolutely necessary to preserve the distinctions which naturally exist or are accidentally introduced into the community. With us, two grand distinctions result from this state of society. First, between the white inhabitants and the free people of color, and secondly, between masters and slaves. Nature has strongly defined the difference, not only in complexion, but in mental, intellectual, and corporeal faculties of the different species. So we were a different species with inferior faculties. Our colonial code has acknowledged and adopted the distinction. So I know that these are things that you've heard before. What I'm going to suggest is that you've never heard them together before. So that was classification. Remember, we were talking about the elements of dispossession. So first, to dispossess somebody, you have to classify them first. You have to classify them as different to you, and then you can dispossess them. And then there's a spectrum of forces. And so, why is there a spectrum of forces? Well, we'll take the jump off from what Hilary Beckles had to say about military force. Beckles notes that 2 months after the 1816 rebellion, what we call the Bussy Rebellion, or some people call the Bussy Rebellion, a white Barbadian expressed concern that the island's control had so weakened that the British could lose all their Caribbean territories within a year, with the islands now held by military strength only. So what that person is saying is that military strength alone could not save the islands. Military strength alone could not save the colonies from liberating themselves. Which is why we need a spectrum of forces. So we need these other forces. Now, many of you will be representing some of these forces. And you will know yourselves when you see the forces. So there is the physical force. Those of you who are in the police and the military, that's how we control, right? That's how we control the society. That's how we keep people in their place. And physical, and by the way, as I'm going through these one by one, they don't disappear. I have to necessarily separate them to go through them, but they all are always there. So we need physical force, the military force. We know what they do. We know what the police does. And they're always there, right? Sociocultural forces. Now, this is important, and I need to explain this to you, why it was a problem for Africans. If you take an African out of their network in their society in West Africa, because you're in Africa, you have family, you have relations, you have status, you have your profession, and so on, and you're extracted from that network and brought to Barbados, suddenly you're powerless. I mean, think of yourselves. If tomorrow you don't have your friends in your network, you become almost powerless. So you're brought here and you're powerless. That did not, and it happened to all of the individual Africans who were brought here, right? That did not happen to the whites. They came, well, some of them were sent Barbados because they were criminals, but the others, they still had their networks in Europe. They were still connected. So we would have lost our culture and so on, and the power and the networking that came with that. Whereas they kept theirs and reproduced theirs and tried to reproduce theirs in Barbados. I don't have to speak about legal force. So remember, we're at three forces now, right? Physical, sociocultural, legal force. So everywhere we turned, when we did something and we were beginning to succeed, all you do is you go to Parliament and you introduce a law. And we'll see a few of those as we go. So the laws protected the planters and disempowered the Africans. One of these early legal forces was the 1688 Code that targeted blacks by prohibiting the use of carrying weapons, of course, because if they're the ones with physical force and they want to keep the physical force to themselves, we have to stop the others that we've classified as others from having weapons. You restrict movement, you limit communications, you prevent runaways, and you assume that anything in their possession is stolen, right? So this one law covered most of the forces that they were about to deploy to completely strangle and disempower and dispossess Africans. We know this because we're perennially talking about this, education and knowledge. Africans came with knowledge, but it wasn't valued. It was only used when it was convenient and when it was profitable for the planters. But even as we got formal education, we ensured that our formal education was only catered to the work that they wanted done. And so if you don't believe me, if you think that we just say these things, sometimes it is good to catch the white planters actually saying aloud what they want us to become and what they had in store for us, so that it isn't a mistake that we have what we have now. So forgive me for reading these things, but I want you to know that they're real and they really happened, right? So after emancipation, the question was, what are we going to do with these black people? How are we going to make them productive? And it became obvious that you need to educate the population if you want them to work for you. And there was this big argument amongst the whites, should we educate them or not? And the people who knew that they needed an educated workforce, they succeeded. They set up this commission. And this is one of the conclusions. The commission compromised and they say, okay, we'll educate the black population. But this is what they had to say. It is admitted that the Negro, that's you, the majority of you, I think, if properly handled, is an excellent laborer. The question then is one of proper handling. Handle the Negro properly and there would be no lack of workers. Such handling would involve, amongst other things, the giving of a sound practical education. Learning to dig cane holes, how to cut cane. Practical education. Some Book learning is, of course, essential. But the mistake of conveying to the child the idea that such education as he acquires as school is calculated to make him eligible for the highest honors of life must be avoided. With 1896. Teach them some practical things, but don't give them the idea that they're really supposed to be scholars, and that's the roots of our education system. We come to religion. I don't have to tell you about religion, right? And the complicit force of the Anglican Church in terms of aligning with the white planters and so on. So by now you're getting the idea, because I know we have a banker. Alfred was supposed to be on the panel, and he is a soldier, an educator. And the festival has him. Oh, okay. So he got an excuse. And oh, so we have Friendly Society, Landship, Economic Enfranchisement. So the point I'm making, and we have religious people here, right? The point I'm making is that sometimes you hear the priest saying, I hear there's this religious man that calls into brass tacks every now and then. And he is insisting that we need to start worrying about economics and the politics and all that. We just need to believe in God and pray, and that will solve the problem. So his favorite force and the foundational force that he thinks will work is religion. There are some other people that will say, just get the education system right. We need to be educated, and that will fix the problem. There are some people that say, we just need proper politicians, and that will fix the problem. Some people say, the problem is cultural. We've developed some bad cultural habits. And if we just get away from those habits, we'll solve the problem. I'm trying to point out to you that the whites weaved a set of forces and deployed all of them to the point where, I'm quoting one of my favorite writers, it's like a spider web that strangled everything else. And the reason that he said a spider's web is because none of these forces on their own is strong. You can't hold a society by military alone or just by education alone. But if you weave them like a spider web, you can strangle. And not only that, everybody who has a passion and so on thinks that their one force is the one that will break through and solve the problem. So that's the spectrum of forces. I admit that most of those things you know about already, because you've heard historians speak and you've heard people say we need to deal with education. They blame the church historically. We have laws that are against us. Those things you know already. Some of these other things you may not be quite aware of. And this is what I talk about, the mechanics. If you want to keep people dispossessed, you restrict the movement and you restrict the communication. So from the time the planters realize, well, first of all, let me just give you the overall picture. The world of the planters in Barbados always remained global because they always had shipping and communications with England and with whoever else was part of, was an English colony. So they always had a global world. But they then consciously, at every step, restricted the world of Africans. So you extract you from your world in West Africa, you pop you here, and you're on a plantation. But then the Africans started talking to one another. They started trading with one another and so all over the island. So you know what they did? They came up with laws. And the laws were, you are not supposed to leave your plantation unless you have a ticket. The master must give you a ticket for you to leave your plantation. So you restrict the world even further. And you restrict movement. And anybody who knows, I think there's a saying in Barbados that if crab don't walk, but you don't eat, or something like that, you don't get fat. If crab don't walk, but you don't get fat. So what they do is that they stop the crabs from walking boat. But it isn't, so I'm not going to read, this is the law. No master, mistress, commissioner, or overseer of any family in this island shall give their Negroes or other slaves leave on Sabbath days, holy days, or any other time. They could just say any time. To go out of their plantations except such Negro or other slave as usually wait upon them, blah, 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 blah. In other words, they can't leave the plantation. So they weren't satisfied that you already extract them from Africa, from the network and their world. You bring them to bars. You don't even want us to have a network as large as the island. Your world must be confined now to the plantation alone. And that's why people could never understand why it is that even though you had 80,000 blacks on the island and 20,000 whites, why couldn't the blacks just overthrow and kill the whites and so on? It's because the whites, you had 20,000, but their world was never just Barbados and 20,000. It was always global. And that's what power means, your network, right? Your world. So all this is saying is that they passed laws so that you couldn't move. So what happened? That was before slavery, right? That first law, the master's law. Oh, and by the way, I forgot, I skipped past it. They actually, in that law, said to the white planters that if your slave leaves the plantation or anybody else's slave leaves the plantation and you capture them without a ticket and without permission, you have to punish them by beating them. Otherwise, you will receive a fine. If that wasn't wicked, I don't know what was. So we get emancipation, 1834 to 1838, right? We get emancipation. And immediately, we start to move. Not just across the island, but migrating to Panama, Cuba, Costa Rica, and so on. So you know what they did? Because, first of all, I told you that movement is a problem. So the planters here did not want Africans to leave the island. One, because it empowered them, but two, because the more Africans you have here, the cheaper the labor would be. The labor supply would be such that they could reduce how much they pay to a minimum. So they passed a law. They passed laws to make sure that people don't leave. Of course, I'm not going to read these. So they passed a lot of laws just to keep you here. 1840, an act for the suppression and punishment of vagrancy because of people walking boat. 1840 again, an act for the governing and better ordering of the island and the prevention of bastardy. An act to prevent the clandestine deportation of young persons. An act to prevent the clandestine deportation of young persons. What was happening is that the young people were getting opportunities. They had agents here who would come and recruit people, take them out for work and so on. So the white planters here portrayed the agents as human traffickers. They're human trafficking the young people. That's the modern term, right? And they put a law against them. 1841, an act to regulate the immigration of laborers from the island and to protect laborers in this island from impositions practiced on them by the immigration agents. So they pretended as though the agents was doing something wrong to the people who wanted to go to Panama and so on. So they passed an act. You know what happened? You remember, and you should know by now that people went to Panama and they started to make a lot of money, right? Because in the end, they had to reverse those laws, but they had to nullify those laws, and people were allowed to leave, right? Not because of the planters here, because of England. And so you may recall that Panama money was flowing into Barbados. We had money. We were beginning to get stink with money. This is the early 1900s, right? Up to the 1930s or so. Money was flowing in. And if money is flowing in, then we do what we normally do. You know, we set up susus and so on, but we set up friendly societies. There were over 200 friendly societies collecting money and savings. And they had a lot of money. One or two started to buy land and to buy plantations. And so you know what these people did? They passed a law because they can't stop the money from coming in. There are 200, I want you to remember the word 200 friendly societies. They can't stop the law, they can't stop the money from coming in. So what did they do? They say, okay, if we don't be careful, these people are going to buy all the plantations. They're going to put together the money and they're going to buy all the plantations. So they passed a law saying that a friendly society could only buy 1 acre. A friendly society could only buy a maximum of 1 acre. Bearing in mind that a plantation was on average 200 to 300, 400 acres. So even if all of them put together, all 200 of them, they would only be allowed to buy a small plantation. So this is the force, this is the legal force. But these are the laws. We were speaking about movement, right? These were the laws that were designed to prevent movement. But as you can see, they were designed to prevent movement because the movement would lead to empowerment, to power. And so let's talk about constructing power. So when the whites first landed in Barbados, it was just like 6,000 of them, right? But they were never really disconnected from England, right? So they landed on the island and they continued to expand their network to build their power. But what they did is but they make sure they did the opposite for the blacks. As blacks tried to expand, they passed laws to restrict. So just to show you that what I'm talking about, this is the port, 1695 in Barbados, right? All these ships and so on. All those ships move and go wherever they want. They move and they sail and they trade and so on and so forth. That's what you call power, economic power and so on. So if you're going to dispossess of people, you make sure that they can never do that. I don't know how many of you have seen this map. This is the red line. We're now up at 1900. Anybody saw this map before? So I'm explaining to you how you construct power. I'm not calling the word power as though it is already constructed. I'm showing you, I'm saying to you, stop saying the word power as though it just exists out there. Power has to be constructed, and you construct power by moving around, meeting people, forming networks, making linkages, trading, and so on and so forth, having communications, and that is how you construct power. This is a map of England's communication network in the 1900s. This is a map of undersea and overland telecommunications cables. And you may or may not notice Barbados right at the center here, because we weren't making a little bit of money. We were at the center of power for the British. And you control your empire through communications.
If you control your empire through communications, you know that communications constructs power and gives you power. So what do you do to black people? We couldn't even communicate with the drum. So first, you couldn't walk around to communicate with one another. Then you couldn't communicate even with the drum. So I'm saying all this to you because I'm hoping that as we go, you're thinking about how all of this applies to today. This is the power of England around the world, the colonies at the peak. Again, I won't read all these, but this is a list of laws. This is a list of laws specifically designed to stop black people from expanding and communicating in order to construct their own or our own power. So let me tell you, I want to tell you some more about power, and how you construct it. I'm soon finishing, right? From the very beginning, I should have used this for libation and everything. From the very beginning, if you read the very first history book that we have of Barbados by Richard Ligon, you'll see that the very first thing that they did was to go about making a map of Barbados. Regardless of how inaccurate it may be today by today's standards and so on, they made a map, right? And the point was, so I'm telling you how you make power, right? The point was, you take something like an island that is so large that you can't, it's sitting down in your house, you can't know what is out there and what is there. So what you do is that you go and you map it, you bring it down to the size of your table or book, and you can see the entire island in one place, and you can sit down with your partners and plot and plan where you're going to go, how you're going to tackle this terrain, and so on, right? That is what you call making power. In other words, what philosophers call everything that we can see and touch on our scale is what philosophers call medium-sized dry goods. So to get power, you take the things that are too big and you make them to your size. You bring them down, right? That's one way. We didn't have any maps. We plotted a rebellion, right? We plotted a rebellion across the island, and we didn't have maps to sit down around and plan with. In response, though, the whites had maps. And they could say, okay, if they go over here, we know this track, we know this is a gully, they can't go down there, and so on and so forth. So you construct map. You know the title is reductions, right? You construct power by bringing down things to your scale, reducing things to your scale. But there's another one that you might not have thought about, which is ledgers. You know, every plantation had ledgers. They kept meticulous ledgers. Inventories, what happened, expenses, revenue. They kept ledgers. This is actually an art exhibition by Annalie Davis. And she has various interpretations, but they're all the background of all of them are plantation ledgers. And why ledgers give power is because, and any accountant knows this, anybody that owns a business, at the end of the year, you need to be able to sit down in one place and see your balance sheet. You need to be, you don't want that when you're trying to figure out how many widgets you have and so on. Every time you want to know, you have to get out and go to the warehouse. And because our memories are very poor, you don't want, well, what is it that we bought in February and so on? You're in December, right? So whereas the maps will bring things to scale in terms of space, the ledgers and accounting will bring them to scale in terms of both space and time. Where were our ledgers? I don't know that I have seen any ledgers for black people in the archives and so on. In fact, today's, we have to be begging small business people to keep accounts, right? And so this is the final section. So I just gave you 2 ways that we construct power, and I promise you that I will tell you about dispossession and why we are powerless and how they do it. So I'm assuming that if I tell you how they dispossessed us and how they construct power, that you can then think for yourself why we are still powerless and why we are still dispossessed, right? And how we could change that. Now, this is the most problematic. This section is the most problematic because this is the center of calculation, right? Parliament in Barbados from the beginning was just a white man's club. The planters just got together and they called it Parliament, and they just made decisions, and all the decisions was for them. And that club continued up until emancipation. But before emancipation, it was just that club. So the planters got together. They brought their map in Parliament. They knew what was going on the island. They brought their maps. They brought their ledgers. They knew how to calculate. And that was the side of calculation and control. Now you're beginning to understand the work that went into dispossessing and controlling us. So what they call Parliament was their center of control. And what happened after emancipation? It continued. The Barbados Mutual is where it was, and Parliament. And then after we got the vote, after adult suffrage, it means we could vote, right? We voted all the white people. So we now control Parliament. But where did the center of calculation go to? It went to the Bridgetown Club. It went to the Mutual. So when the budget was put together by our politicians, because I guess you know by now, the politicians were the junior partners and the merchants and planters were the senior partners in this arrangement. So when the budget was done, I understand, I don't know how to, up onto the time of Owen Arthur, right? It first had to go through that center of calculation, what I call an obligatory point of passage. It had to go through the Bridgetown Club or the Barbados Mutual to get approval. Or it had to go through the guys who used to meet down at East Coast, called the fellas that used to meet. Where? Down East Coast, Bathsheba said, cattle wash, yeah. Fellas meet down there, and he said, this is how we've been controlled and dispossessed all this time. Right? So the mutual became Sagicor, and now the center calculation is the social partnership. Anybody ever wondered why, even though we had a Chamber of Commerce, it was necessary to have something called a private sector agency? Budget had to go through the private sector agency, right? I don't know whether the social partnership serves the same purpose today. Maybe we're freer now, rooted in faith. I'm rooting that position in faith. I'm hoping that we're rising in freedom. I don't know. But I'm not going to go any farther except to say a couple things to bring it into the present so that you don't think that this is just old history and abstract. So we have a credit union movement. I would say, anybody that disagree with me, I would say that even though people say black people can't work together and we like to spend money and waste it and so on, the credit union has billions of dollars. And I don't know that there's white people money in there. It's black people money, right? How is it possible in a black country with credit unions, knowing our history and our struggles with friendly society, the Barbados landship, and so on? How is it that we are taking our money from the credit union and putting on a bank? The credit unions have to bank their money with a bank. But the reason we're in the credit union is because we don't want to bank with the bank. So you're trying to say to me that our politicians, our political force, cannot construct some legal forces, also using some force of knowledge and education, to construct a system where the credit unions have a facility at our central bank or some other arrangement where they don't have to bank with a commercial bank, which doesn't belong to us. And why is it that incentives aren't in place and encouragement and laws so that they can have their own bank? I just hear rumors of it, and people speculating and so on, but I don't think that it is morally and ethically right for our money on the credit union to be placed on commercial banks. I think that there's something, I think that the history that I went through with you just now says that there's something fundamentally wrong with that and a betrayal of our ancestors. And Malachi spoke about our ancestors and what they went through. That is a fundamental betrayal. And so we see remember we spoke about movement and communications. I said I'll give you two, I'll give you three. Why is it that we know that movement is important, as we just saw, and communication? Why is it that our governments pretend as though having inter-island travel is something that should be profit-making and not something like roads that the governments understand that they have to build and subsidize? You know why? Because black people too enterprising, and as soon as the first opportunity you get, you got a ferry or cheap flights, you bought the place trading, and then nobody ain't buying the things from the large wholesalers and so on anymore, the large merchants. First opportunity, I guarantee you, first opportunity, you see people on the people ferries and the planes with containers and with hand barrels and so on. So there's an enthusiasm for that. And so that's why I went through the mechanics of movement, because most people don't think of these things, right? And if you understand the importance of movement, then you give it value and priority, and you insist that we would insist that our governments make it possible. Do whatever is necessary to make it possible. That's the first thing. And the other thing is, I'm not going to talk about our telecommunications and the problems with those. But why is it that up to now our young people who go on the internet and want to be influencers, want to make money like everybody else by having likes and followers and so on, why is it that they can't monetize it because of the arrangement with the banks and so on? If the banks don't want to make the arrangements and so on, why isn't that a number one priority with CARICOM? Because they're not in any they're not particularly interested in making that communication, those communications links, and the ability to make money from those communications links possible. Oh, so yeah, I told you there's a section 2, which is just as long. So I wouldn't do it. So, the social. Let's say, let me read it for you. The question is, who comprises the social partnership? I guess she wants to know who's doing the calculating now. The Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Barbados Small Business Association, Barbados International Business Association, Barbados Manufacturers Association, Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Barbados Bankers Association, Barbados Employers Confederation, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados, Barbados Coalition of Service Industries. I don't know that like this. I don't know if that's still like this. Barbados Agricultural Society. I don't see the private sector agencies there. I don't think I forgot them. I suspect they're not in. Again, if anybody here knows the private sector agency and who makes it up, I suspect that is majority white. White companies, right? majority white companies and white. Why was it necessary to have a separate private sector agency if you got Chamber of Commerce already? Because they must have their center calculation and control. So with that, I want to say to you that you now have your job of, in a hybrid way, going after reclassifying everything, dealing with all these forces of dispossession, and making sure that we can move and go wherever we feel like going, and communicating with whoever we feel like communicating, and keeping an eye on the social partnership. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope I didn't stretch your patience too far.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Dr. Murray for that very insightful lecture. At this point, we are going to invite our panelists to come forward and take their places at the desk. You members of the audience have been making your notes, and you're ready. Later on, we're going to be having your questions or your comments or whatever you want to do. So we hope that you have been taking notes. I have my own notes here, and I was outside there. They're showing it out there, so I was able to. Follow the lecture out there, and also to get my insights and also be able to make some comments later on. Now, I'll introduce the panelists for you. I don't know, it's a little slack. I'll start with Mr. I think he's a brother, Matthew Clark. He's a Matthew. That's the gentleman in the yes, the youngest of the lot, the baby in the crowd. He is a creative director, educator, and comic book illustrator, of all things. I don't know how many of you read comic books. I used to love to read my comic books when I was much younger. And my brother used to get very upset with me for all the comics he used to have about the place. He's also a writer. He says here from the Caribbean island of Barbados, wherever that is. Clark is known for his work in corporate and commercial rebranding, but his other passion lies within the comic book medium, which Clark sees as his personal artistic pursuit. Clark has resided in his birthplace, Barbados, for his entire life, where its English-speaking Caribbean culture has had a profound impact on the content he creates. His comic books always feature a Caribbean cultural influence. Clark sees himself as preserving West Indian heritage in the comic culture space. Clark's experience in the marketing industry since 2007 has ranged from PR work, graphic designer, and creative director to earn him several advertising awards at the Addy and Angel Awards. Clark has an associate degree and bachelor's degree, first class honors in graphic design from the Barbados Community College. He also has a master's in art education with distinction, believe it, from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. In the comic book genre, he has received several NIFCA, Glyph, and Addy Awards and was the first Barbadian to be nominated for a prestigious Eisner Award at San Diego Comic Con in 2022. He's been created comics since primary school. Under the publishing house he created, we have the following works, and you can look up for these: Mass Anthology 1 and 2, 2009, Heartman 1, 2007, and this was published in 2011, Heartman 2, Life and Death in Paradise, Hard Ears, Crossroads, Barbados and Eastern Caribbean. Matthew is currently an instructor on the TVET Council of Barbados on the Barbados Community College Game Art and Animation Technical Degree Program since its inception in 2024, where he's using his expertise to engage learners in building a future animation sector in Barbados and the wider Caribbean. So let's get a round of applause for Mr. Clark. And you can look out for his comic books and his other works. We have another member on the panel, the Barbados Leadership Association's president, Colonel Wayne Worrell. Colonel Wayne Worrell attended Grisette's and Eden Lodge Primary before moving on to Commerce School, where he represented Barbados in junior shooting and top scored at an international competition in Bisley, UK. A dedicated cadet, he rose to company sergeant major, band drum major, and junior cadet officer, leading 7 independence parades and served as principal drum major in 1992. He studied art and design at Barbados Community College and later taught at the Lodge School, Springer Memorial, and Leicester Vaughan, funding youth rhythms at the Lodge School alongside teaching. He worked as head of design at Graphic Impressions Printery, performed professionally as a drummer, and designed stages for major cultural productions. He later became regional territorial head for customizing Oracle Business Systems, earning two top international awards before founding Grand Designs Inc., specializing in property development and architectural design. Now president of the Barbados Leadership Association, Colonel Worrell has led significant transformation of the organization, expanding membership, strengthening youth mentorship, securing key institutional protections, and advancing its UNESCO cultural safeguarding status. He is currently focused on building a sustainable, future-ready landship rooted in cultural preservation and economic empowerment. So let's give a hand to Colonel Worrell, please. And he does have I'm sorry that we don't have the landship here, but the landship put on recently. I'm a member of the Mount High School Scholars Association, and I also have to thank Colonel Worrell for bringing the landship to a concert we had recently. Everyone enjoyed it. We always enjoy the performances, and I did a little maypole dancing with them. I held the maypole actually. As an area manager in retail banking, who started as a teller in 1996, Rodney Mears, he's the last one there now, so he left it for the last because he's one of our brothers. Rodney Mears has seen the industry from every angle. He holds an international MBA and nearly 3 decades of experience in financial services. But today he is here to explain how the system was rigged. Rodney pulls back the curtain on the banking practices, lending biases, and structural barriers that keep black communities poor and powerless, offering an insider's critique of an industry he knows intimately. So let's have a rousing round of applause for Brother Mears. So, I don't know who is going to speak first. I bring the mic over to you.
You're gonna bring a mic to me.
You can just relax and sit on the thing and speak from here.
I like intimacy. I like to come closer to the people. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so proud to be here as the president of the Barbados Landship Association. I made it my business and purpose to be here this afternoon. Although we are performing, for example, at Hotel Festival just about 2 hours ago, I wanted to be here. We have the structures in place. You heard it say that we restructured the entire organization, so there are persons under me who are responsible for each engagement, and therefore I now can be afforded to be here and enjoy this lecture. I really am very interested in part 2. So I don't know if I'm going to need to rent a time capsule or something. When this lecture is going to be? Next year. So I'm going to fast forward in time to next year and come back. And let me tell you why. I have a problem. As president of the Barbados Landship Association, I'm doing all these fantastic things, going out giving talks about what is landship, friendly society, looking after each other, and at the end of every lecture, you can guess what the question is going to be. So the landship, they still do that? What do you think the answer is? The landship is still a saving society. They still collect money and savings and so forth. Give me a quick answer, yes or no? The answer is no, and I made it my business in 2026 that I will not be embarrassed by that anymore. I'm currently reviewing about 3 options. The top runner is the Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union Junior Thrift Saving Account, so to empower about 300 young people into getting into savings, to do a thrift account for the young people, because we have to restart the culture of savings, giving them 100-day challenges so that at the end of the year, when we add the 300 days together, we got some money, we got something substantial. But I have a problem. My problem is that we have a culture. And remember, a lot of these are poor people children. I'm not going to tell you which schools because I'm not going to do that. But they're poor people children, a lot of very poor people children that I can order them, I can motivate them, I can do whatever I feel like, but who at the end of the day own those accounts? Y'all are parents in here, so tell me who own the account? I can't control the children's savings. Despite the fact that every performance we are going to give a little $10 to boost their account and try to help them through attending landship, performing, etc., to build their 100-day challenge each time, even if they make it, the culture of the parents, and we can't blame the parents. Because I'm going to tell you one quick story before I pass on the mic. I was doing a research paper on landship. Basically, we had to figure out all the reasons why landship failed and what's needed for it to succeed. This is 3 years ago before he took up the job to be not just president, but I'm also the CEO. And one of the things that upset me is that this thing about registration. Something as simple, corporate affairs and registration. Protecting your identity, a simple trademark. We go into UNESCO and we don't own our own trademark, and all types of people out there can do land ship this, land ship that, land ship the next. How could this be so after 162 years of land shipping? And I then became educated. I came across an article, I think it was Davison, who did a research paper, and it spoke of a Governor Hodgson. You can look it up, but he was not a very nice fella. He's the one that started the Golden Stool War with the Ashanti tribe, when he insists, how dare you have a stool for them and not for me? And the fellas listened to him and said, we coming back for you tomorrow. Am I telling lies? That same guy came to Barbados when when the fellas encircled the thing and he flee. And he came to Barbados, became the governor. When he became the governor in Barbados, he came and saw this land ship thing and said, who are these people? Ordinary guys of whatever. I won't repeat some of the things he probably said. But basically, how dare them call him lofty terms, themselves lofty terms like commander and captain? Who are they to do these sort of things? And he put a rule in place and he decided these friendly societies of the land ship must register. Poor people, they may not have much legal thinking, half of them went to school, etc. They must register officially as a friendly society. And those who registered, the hammer came down. No uniform, no this, no that, no the next. And it became more beneficial for the Barbados land ship to be underground and do their thing quietly on the underground. And when I learned about that, then it made sense. It made sense. Why is it they didn't register? And for years, a lot of land ships never registered officially. And I know y'all going to say that was 1901 to 1904 is when he was the governor of Barbados, and you would assume that that's a long time ago. But let me tell you all something. Land shipmen has lived long. Real talk. You know a lot of land shipmen live close to the 90s. You know that, right?
I didn't know that.
Huh? A lot of land shipmen are in their growth to their 90s, the late 80s. This is the reality. So therefore, when you have a guy like Vernon Watson, the late Lord High Admiral Vernon Watson, who died at the age of 89, guess what? His father was a previous Lord High Admiral. And when I calculated what Governor Hodgson did was in his father's lifetime, and it is only one generation removed. I know that you mentioned the academics talk about 20-year generation. Black people live long, so we got to change that. Only one or two generations ago, and they are still afraid. Registration was a thing that didn't happen. Obviously, I fixed that. That was the first thing I did a 2 years ago. Full registration, full thing, etc. So that out of the way, that done and dusted. But the bottom line is that it taught me that we as a set of people suffer from, let's call it post-traumatic stress. And the situation that took place then was passed on to the Lord High Admiral Vernon Watson and his amazing, wonderful efforts to preserve the land ship. There were still some things on if there that he was afraid to do because of things. Remind me of the Tuskegee experiment on the black people, the black soldiers who were afraid up to this day, black people frightened to take a vaccination because they took the Tuskegee soldiers and did the syphilis experiment. Y'all know about that? It reminds me of that. So that was done and they're afraid. And let me come back to my problem. My problem is that when I motivate, give all types of incentive, say to them, you come out and you perform, this is going towards meeting your 100-day challenge and you're going to be rewarded and so forth. At the end of the day, the parent who is not coming up with a culture of saving and watching one's money grow, etc., to do something bigger and better at the end of it might be a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I came to find out how to solve that problem, hopefully today. I came to learn. From all of you, I came to learn. There is a social and cultural and so forth situation that I want to overcome because I have some bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young people that I'm so excited about that they are ready to do new things. Right now, Landship is trending, and we're riding that wave as far as we can go. And one of the things on my table is that contract to be signed. It wasn't signed as yet because I have a board and, you know, Admiral Jacobs, Admiral Ashanti Trotman, and so forth need to say, yes, this is good to go. But other than that, it will be done because it's one of the things that must be done. Let's support our children and help me to make that a reality through coming up with some innovative ideas that the parents and the children can all feel. It can all be a success and a happy ending, and we build a culture of savings. Despite whatever Governor Huxon went to do, we're going to fix it right now. Thank you.
I will now we'll hear from Mr. Clark. We'll leave the best for the last.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I would like to start with this question, and you could respond by a show of hands. How many of us here discuss money with our parents? Or have discussed money with our parents when we were young or young at heart?
Discuss, not ask for money.
Yeah, not ask for money, but talk about it. All right? And how many of us do so with our children? Okay. And how many of us have discussed with our children or have had a discussion with our parents what your net worth is, what you are worth? Very few. So you see, already there's a sort of neurosis of our relationship with value, earnings, worth, and even our closest relatives, being our children, and before them our parents. And this is a problem, because if you take up like Forbes magazine, for example, you see a lot of celebrities, a lot of businessmen, and by all accounts, we don't know this for sure, but they seem very open with discussing their net worth. You can go online and you can see these persons proudly declaring, well, I'm worth X billion or X million, right? And we know this is so because they're worth so much, they have to deal with taxes, etc. But look at the difference in their relationship with wealth versus ours. I'm just worth probably a few $1,000s, if so much. But my girlfriend don't know how much is in my account. Why is my earnings so secretive and clandestine? Right? Because what am I afraid of? Am I afraid she will ask me for money? Am I afraid she will exploit me? Well, how much you going to get from me? But what I'm trying to show you is that relationship with finance that we seem to have as a people. Many years ago, I was in a household. I had a friend from a different ethnic background. And in this household, we were laymen, you know, playing games, etc. I overheard a discussion. We were in the television room, and the family was having dinner, etc. And with his older brother, they were talking about finances. And the family seemed to be organizing financial planning for the summer. So they were planning a vacation. They were also planning, they had to own a business. And that was shocking for me. I've up to this day, I have not had such a discussion with my parents. And here I was eavesdropping as we were playing this video game in an adjacent room and listening to them openly discuss how much money was in a particular account, how they plan to service it, certain debts that were owed. And his older brother at the time probably was late teens, 19, etc. And he just had they got him his first motor car. And I say that to say, as a people, we seem to have a disconnect amongst our family with discussing finances, planning. What are we really worth? How can we pull together to affect that net worth? And that then impacts how we see our relationship with business. Now, I've come today in my, this is my African garb for today, my business brand in black business. One of the instruments, I believe, of power. The owning the means of production, which we would have just seen highlighted in the lecture that was just given. And owning the means of production is very important because I can't pass on a job to my children. I don't have children, but if I ever do, I cannot pass on to them a job. I'm an employee. But if I have children or family, I could perhaps pass on the ownership of a business. So that's how generational wealth then is passed on and developed, etc., and so forth. And I think where that starts is how we discuss amongst each other, especially our family. Let's start with our family, our closest family, children, parents. How we view the discussion of money, the discussion of net worth, even using those terms. Even though we may not have much, it's still, you have something. But how do we discuss that and how do we approach that with our families? So I'd like to start the discussion there, or at least plant that seed in our heads. Hopefully when we go back home tonight and we having breakfast tomorrow, we could engage in some sort of discussion with a close loved one, or start that, inculcate that practice with our children. But that was something that always stood with me, and so I would highlight that in this forum, amongst other things when the mic makes its way back to me. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Brother Mills.
All right. Good night, everyone.
And this is the one about who's given us some insider information on banking.
Let me start from the beginning because most people don't understand the creation of banking or where bank came from. And the bank started around the 17th, the concept of banking, where the wealthy had their temples, the castles, the room, where then the wealthy will come and store the grains and whatever case that they may need. Then around the 17th century, the goldsmith of London, they then created these safes. And in creating these safes, then people started to bring their gold, their diamonds, whatever was needed. Until around 1930, early 1930s, then in the States, they have Governmental Federation of Mortgage and Land Loan Corporation started a business. And that's where it started to get even more ticklish. Around that time, they created a map. As Dr. Derek would have mentioned earlier today about creating a map. But they created a map, and in black communities was red circle. Automatically they were considered hazardous. So it was noted back then that you were not allowed to give anyone any financing or any support in any black neighborhood around that time. So you can see where the control or where the power started from going back in 1930. And if you understand then the development of that and what the government did outside of that, even when the villages started to do well, then they got up and said, well, you know what? We need to run a train track through this area because we need to transport some items and goods. And again, you separate them. And once you start to separate them, they go their different ways, then they lose the power again. You have to go, you have to rebuild, you have to start over. And if you can imagine going through, I think started in 1840 or 1870 till COVID, 14 global recessions. Understand not getting the support you will need to start back the business, to continue the business, and how the power was there to stop black people from developing and growing the way that they can grow. And it was very unfortunate of the times that they would have had to go through. And those who did well did extremely well. And even the statistics on financing back then, less than 30% of people actually got, black people actually got financing. Less than 30. A majority of them were doctors, lawyers, people who were fortunate enough to get education, to be deemed as the hierarchy will have a stable job or one correct. And that is how the banking system then was created. I mean, and even in Barbados and the Caribbean up until the 1970s, it was so difficult for a black person to get a mortgage, and not a chattel mortgage. Mortgage, concrete, cement, foundation. And for most black people back in the days, understanding that back then banking was relationships. You had to know someone in order to get a loan. So understand back then what black people started to do is they started to open businesses. And you would have opened Rodney Mary's Investments or Dr. Derek Murray Investment. And the banks then started to entertain lending to black people around that time. And then it started to evolve, and over time, where then policies became central bank takeover, the anti-money laundering came in. Up to this day and age now, there are policies and procedures in place to now level out the financial lending to any and everybody. So luckily for us now, we don't have the struggles that a lot of people would have gone through. But to understand what they would have gone through, understand being an entrepreneur and not advancing or not doing well, then we were told to go and get education. And everybody went and get education. And everybody went and get a monthly salary. And that in itself now is problems for those who don't know how to manage it. Because no one teaches us, or we don't have a program to teach you when you start to get a job, how to save, how much to go savings, how much to go financing. And what we don't realize is that when you have a monthly income, you have so many small expenses coming out of your salary that you remain poor, for people who do not know how to budget their salaries. And it's the things that they force us from going from one direction into the next, so we remain powerless. And it's unfortunate because now in this day and age, as Dr. Murray also talked about, the networking and the communications and stuff, now with social media and other avenues, entrepreneurship has its means now of going more than outside of Barbados. But how much of us in here have decided, let me sell this product overseas, let me sell this product to Canada, let me sell this product to the States? Because mental slavery is still real right now, you know. We have been programmed for so many years that until we start to train our children, we are going to start in this world that we are in for a lot more time. I want to also mention the psychology, the human psychology of it, and what most people or what I can give you from my experience in a bank. Anybody can tell me or guess, when a young gentleman comes out of school, finish UE, what is the first loan he's going to come for? A vehicle loan, exactly. A depreciated asset. A depreciated asset that comes with gas, maintenance, it comes with the insurance. And no one teaches that person, well, you got to put down this money every month so that you can manage yourself. No one teaches that. And then he gets trapped in that whole system because once you have a car, you're perceived as you starting to make it. So the pressure is on now to get the car. You get a salary increase. I can afford a more fancy car now. So I'm going from the Suzuki's to the Toyota. You get a salary increase. You're going from a used car to a brand new car. And the system now forces you to remain poor. Because society or human psychology, you need to be accepted. Similarly for a female right out of UB, y'all, anybody can guess what's the first debt they take on? Well, nobody know this one. The first thing is a credit card or a travel loan, because they're going now to get clothes. They're going to look the part now because they have now been accepted, or this is how I can show off, or this is how I can be deemed as accepted. And it's unfortunate because no one is there telling them, hold on, work for a year first, save first. This is the things you need to do to improve. And what people don't see, going back to the plantation owners and other business owners back in the day, their child accepted the first vehicle that they had. The child would have either received it by hand-me-down, which they were happy, or the person would have given them money to go and buy their first vehicle. Different than us. We said we had to work hard, you got to work hard too. And therefore we don't give our children that first helping hand to get off without the struggle. And the struggle is there, and the struggle will always be there until we know can help them. And unfortunately, we as a race still fight against one another in terms of communities, in terms of development, in terms of what we know and how we can educate people to improve. And it's just sad. Things like this form in terms of educational lectures and stuff. But look who is here now. Anybody want to guess the average age group here today? And most of us have the experience. Most of us would have developed. Most of us would have learned. Some of us are already trapped. And it's hard when you're trapped unless you come and have a discussion with a financial advisor. How do I get out of this trap? Yes, I'm going from paycheck to paycheck. Yes, I could afford to have a whiskey every month, so I'm happy. But are you saving? If your child, your sister, or your mother, something was to happen to them and need to go to the hospital, do you have $10,000 or $20,000 that you can help them? Or do you have to come to the bank to get a loan, to make a monthly payment, to reduce your expenses or your disposable income, and then you're still struggling? And it's unfortunate the way it has been. But again, society has forced us to be powerless. On what to teach us education and going to get an education, they don't teach us how to manage that money or how we can grow wealth and growth. Thank you.
Yeah, I will ladies and gentlemen, I wish this gentleman would stop coming up here. This is a special area here reserved for the MC. Yeah, you can follow, Brother Mario. Yes, it's your turn now. You've been sitting and listening very patiently to everything that's been going on. I'm sure you have questions, you have queries. So we'd like to hear that we have a microphone right here. You can come up to the microphone and you can ask your questions. Wow. I see one gentleman, very beautifully attired in a, I think you call it the shiki. I went to India Man the other day, was going to buy one. He said, what about you? Please state your name and ask the question. You got to jerk up the little thing.
My name is Michael Seeley. I grew up in... You want to hear my resume as well?
No, we just want the question. Please make your question brief.
It's not just a question. I go back to Dr. Murray's presentation when he spoke about the forces of control. And he spoke about knowledge or education.
Same thing, together.
Because I think that ignorance is our greatest sin. And real education is our salvation. But part of our problem, and this is my perception, is that we have been educated to think how Massa wants us to think. And for one instance, those of us who are bankers and financiers and so on, we are being led to think that those criminal organizations like the IMF and the World Bank, which were created to control us and keep us disenfranchised, we who are educated think that they're sanctimonious. And that is part of the problem. We also have another problem in terms of teaching our children and so on. One of the big things is the media. We get caught up as small people fighting about BLP and DLP and NDP and FDP and all this.
Friends of democracy.
And we fight about that. Wells Massa has it all control. He is over it and he wins every time. And we suffer. But we are fighting about the small things. With your comments, there's a lot more in my mind, but I am not very gifted at speaking, so I can't process it all at this moment. I wait your response.
Yeah, I just want. Well, before you come up, Joey, I want to say that I would agree 95% with what you said. But I just want to caution, and this was the point of the entire lecture, I just want to caution that, or make the point that all of us have our favorite force. So Rodney's favorite force is banking and finance, right? Matthew, what's your favorite? What's the solution? When I say favorite force, what I mean is that everybody thinks that there's this one thing that if you get it right, is the solution. And the educators feel it's education. And the gentleman just now felt is education. But the point I was making about the laws, so we had people who knew what to do, who were educated, who set up friendly societies, who did what they had to do. And you know what happened? You just pass a law. Pass a law to thwart them, right? So that's why it could never be just one fundamental thing that we say we have to get this right. We have the difficult job of having to get everything right at the same time.
Yes, I see another gentleman there by the podium, and be very generous.
Yes, for the award.
And please state your name and ask your question.
Do I have to give my name? My name is Dalton Llewellyn Williams. Are you hearing me? Everyone hear me? It is of interest. And the brother here, Malcolm? Matthew? Yes. I take good note of what you said in your discourse. But what interests me most of all is the part with allowing your offspring to know your financial background, or according to how you understand it from you, letting them know all that you probably have, including your bank account. And it's of interest because only yesterday I was reading of someone who did that. And I don't really wish to go into details what happened to them. And apart from reading that, and that is not even in Barbados, that was in St. Vincent, and I don't know if anyone here would have read it, where a lady went to the United States to work for 5 years to better her condition back home. And she allowed her daughter to know all about her income. And when she returned, she had not a cent, no money, no house. So why I'm here is to say you have to be cautious with who you allow. And it happens here too. Because I know of instance where it happened here, where persons put all of the interests, according to my grandmother, would say, all in one basket. And when it turn over, they lose everything. So meanwhile, you were saying, and I know you also dealt with persons, I don't put it over and away, and we would have read a lot of who allowing the children to know all of their worth, and in some cases putting it in some of the names. But I would also tell you that there's some persons here who did that, and some of the wind up, the persons who put it in their names wind up with nothing. So I'm only here to question and to comment on that, because I find it interesting, and I don't think, because I do not know if it is anything to do with color, white, black, pink, or yellow, but I can tell you most of the cases I know of did this color. I say no more. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay.
If I may, sorry, if I may, excellent question, and I think that is a point that will concern most people in the audiences, including myself. You notice I said that particular persons don't know my worth either, right? I don't even know my mother's worth, right? So we all are being cautious, and rightfully so. But I think the solution to that, and where in the instance, the example that I highlighted earlier, is the culture. So if you are in a space, you know that there's a difference between nature and nurture, and I don't think that there's any difference between a person of the whatever hue, because greed is greed, right? I know of instances overseas where Caucasian persons have killed people over wealth, etc. I think what happens is when you come up in a culture where the discussion of wealth in a mature way is the norm, it will not guarantee that you will totally be safe. But that is where one of the instruments that Dr. Murray discussed, where we have law. So you have certain documentation, wills, you get him married, you have the prenuptial arrangement, certain contracts. These things are put in place and are known that offer some semblance of protection. But even then, you cannot always safeguard against the impious designs of individuals. I mean, let's be real. People get killed in land. I always start with people getting killed over land in St. Lucie and St. Philip. And they probably didn't even know the net worth either. They just know the person had this land and you have a dispute and somebody hit the other one with a pitchfork. You know, that's a very famous case. But what I'm saying is that we have to develop a culture of financial maturity as well. And it can't happen overnight. So if you didn't have it before, you can't just snap a finger and suddenly you're talking about how much you're worth. Next thing you know, your family members plotting or whatever. And I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm suggesting is, as a people, we inculcate through education and a cultural shift where we start to slowly reduce this fear of discussing, at least amongst our close family, finances, right? Doesn't mean everybody has to know everything you have. But at the same time, this clandestine sort of secrecy doesn't serve you well either. Because if I'm in a household, there are 4 persons in my household. Let's say I'm in a house, my wife, myself, I have a son, and my mother is in the house, right? We have a average sort of family setting. And we are looking to get into a business arrangement, or we're looking to finance something. She has her siloed activities going on. I have my activities going on. We all operating in silos. Versus another household from a different culture where persons tend to pool money together. right? Doesn't mean that you have access to all of my money, you know everything that I have, but we are able to pool money together. And this is not alien to African people. We have the Susu, so we're doing this even before we were kidnapped and brought here. But if we start to pool resources together, right, and we have discussions of finance, then the taboo nature of finance that exists now will start to be reduced. Because finances should not be taboo. In other households, it is not. And it's starting with households because it's starting with the family, right? But whether you're doing a business activity or whatever, there has to be some sort of discussion going on about certain things. And we see in the plantation and how the leisure, which is another example, you're discussing finances, you're listing inventory. So that is what I'm really talking about. But I agree with you, we must be cautious. And that is why I would respond to you where we must create a culture where persons are accustomed to such, and it is not as novel, and it doesn't create this environment where persons are now enticed to do nefarious things. But believe you me, nefarious things will occur whether you open about finances or not, because people can look at you and make assumptions as to what you have.
Yes, well, we're going to have one more question, and then we're going to end the discussion because we know you all are getting thirsty and we have drinks and things out there. So, one more question.
Good evening. My name is Will James. I'm from St. Lucia. I'm visiting and I was invited to this lecture. My question is to Dr. Marie. Do you see your research, well, you said that it was commissioned by the government. Do you see your research being used by them and your recommendations, or will it just be like in St. Lucia on the shelf gathering this?
I have no idea. What happened was that they wanted to find out about economic enfranchisement. They contracted my agency. I wrote it. I sent it off, and I've been around. I'm going to be 60 tomorrow, right? So I've seen a lot of research on shelves. I've been around government and so on. But there's always the off chance that somebody, some malicious, in Barbados we say malicious, right? You know what malicious means in Barbados, right? Some malicious person will pick it up and say, well, I didn't know that they had people that used to write these kind of things about hairs. It looked like it got some useful things. Or it might be completely ignored, but my antidote to that is to do this so that it's not just for government, because really and truly, this is not something that government can solve alone. This is, as you could see, it really requires that everybody understand the mechanisms and force the politicians and force one another to deal with it.
But Award, if it on the panel, well, I understand Mr. Green would like to ask a question.
Enjoy.
We just love the two more questions.
Why have two more questions?
Because they had their hands up for what?
They had what?
Their hands up.
Good night. Thanks for the diverse thought about finance, poverty, and wealth. And in terms of Derek's fundamental core of weaving all these things together for us to come out with a solution, one of the things I would like to understand within our discussion, when we say poor and poverty, what we really speaking to.
Well, you're the finance man. Okay, I'll tell you what I mean by poor and I didn't actually. I don't think I used poor and poverty. I think keeping us poor and powerless, right? So poor just means that you don't have the resources to afford the things that you need, right? The basic things, and it's not an abstract or academic idea when a mother can't find food to feed her children and they're crying in the middle of the night because of hunger.
Some of us are poor, we got the car, and we got the travel.
Well, you're talking about relative poverty, but okay. The reason, so I'm going to speak to this question about wealth to answer your question, right? About disclosing wealth. The reason why people in the US can talk about their net worth is because they have a net worth, right? They have a net worth. Most of us, our net worth is negative, right? We owe people everything, right? Most of us. And when we talk, when most of the time that people are talking poverty, especially the international agencies and so on, you know, they talk about relative poverty and absolute poverty. So if you cannot, for me, poverty is if you cannot afford to feed your children and they're crying because they're hungry, for me, that's a very baseline idea of poverty, right? Anything, you know, the hierarchy of basic needs. Once you cover your hierarchy of basic needs, right, I consider you now to be looking to advance in terms of wealth. Right? But a lot of the time discussions happen as though, you know, people have wealth. I've never known wealth or too many people around me with wealth. Never know. For me, I know it theoretically, but I've never known. I know that Adrian, for example, I know that he might got a couple million in his account, but I don't actually know it. I don't actually know it because he never sit down and tell me. Right? I see people with big cars and so on, but I don't know if how much they owe the bank, and if next week they may not have it because the bank took it up. Right? I don't know, but I know that those people who call in on the calling program and they're pleading for little care at the hospital because they can't afford a $100 visit to a doctor and they're at the hospital for 3 days. I know that that's poverty. So, and you said something else, poverty and...
Poor and poverty.
Poor and poverty, right.
But
So,
when you think of it internationally, I mean, through the entire world, more or less, the black race is really, black people are really at the bottom of the economic ladder. So I think what the gentleman, the brother was trying to say was that you need to bring them up a little higher up, because if you look at the States, black people are still at the lowest. They have some rich, very rich black people, but basically the income level and so on is much lower than the white population here in Barbados and all over. So the problem, the whole idea is to try to get black people with the mindset that they would improve themselves and try to raise the level of their the economic situation relative to that of other races.
but not to prolong it, I am more concerned though with, you know, in a society you're always going to have people who are poor and so on. My concern is with the structures and the mechanisms that are deliberately manipulated to keep people in a particular position. In what I call the wealth generating, people who control the wealth generating mechanisms. So, you know, you have a government, everybody's beginning to live well and so on. And you have a government that decide, for no good reason, except that everybody living well, we can raise some more taxes. Why? Because somebody else in some other interest is in their interest that you dampen the economy. Economy heating up. People got too much money, right? People living too well. So somebody else decides is in their interest to dampen the economy. So the politician decides we will impose more taxes, or we will set up a regulation here. Or remember the used car people who started to bring in cars? It doesn't have anything to do with education, or these people were educated, they knew what they were doing, and out of the blue, arbitrarily, somebody just set up a registry, just write a law, a rule, a regulation, a policy, impoverish all of them, bankrupt them for the large companies. So that's my concern, because we only have to discuss poverty because we don't get a fair break. People are always loading the dice against us.
We have one more question. Right, Rodney?
Yeah. You have one more person with 2 questions. So it seems to me like there are really 2 different discussions. There is making sure that black people are no longer poor, i.e. they can feed their children and have their basic requirements met, basic needs met. And then there's another question of setting up mechanisms that black people can generate wealth. And those are 2 different discussions. But I really appreciate your presentation, Dr. Murray, because it brings them together and it talks about the fact that we often miss that even though we are in different arenas and we are dealing with different questions, that they're all connected. There are forces that need to be connected in order to work efficiently, not for an individual, but for a people. Because as many people have said, they got enough wealthy black people all over the world. And even in the 1800s and the 1900s, there were black people who had the ability to generate wealth. But we're not talking about the ability for an individual to generate wealth. We're talking about black people as a whole, as a collective, and how mechanisms, even if they allow certain individuals to slip through the cracks, keep the collective at a particular place in the global hierarchy. So my first question is this to Dr. Murray. There must be an organizing principle that brings these forces together. What was that organizing principle for the Europeans that allowed them to organize these forces for a singular purpose? And what should that organizing principle be now for black people so we can bring these forces together? On the panel, you have a philosopher, a visual artist, a banker, a musician. Are you all bringing forces together? If so, how? If not, why not? What is the organizing principle that brings these forces together? And to the panel, in your particular field, Matthew, what networking are you doing to bring forces together to make sure that your particular favorite force works with the collective? Rodney, how are you bringing forces together to make sure that your force and your area of expertise works in a cohesive manner? Or how can you, in order to, for the benefit of black people? And Mr. Worrell, in your area, how are you or how can you bring forces together for this collective good? I hope I made some sense.
Yes, I don't know who invited Adrian Green to this. Earlier I had asked Adrian to read a document. I want him to read it for me because it exactly answers the question that you asked. But it was too long, and he's a theater person, and I took his advice not to bore you to death with reading the whole thing. But I'll summarize it to answer your question. So what happened with Europeans? What I was going to give you to read starts off like this. The whites were not right, nor were they the strongest. And then it goes on to talk about the priests were always cursing, were always reprimanding the merchants for being too rapacious, and the soldiers for being too brutal. The administrators were always complaining about lack of efficiency with everybody. The ethnologists were vexed with everybody amongst themselves, the white people. None of them could get along because all of them represented politicians and so on, represented a force that they considered to be pure. So the politicians felt that it is any success for them, and he's talking about them, the whites, the Europeans colonizing, say, an island. For them to colonize an island, the politicians felt it is politics that will solve the problem. The military felt it is the military that is keeping us on this island and so on. The priest felt it is the Bible and God. But when push come to shove, they were all too weak because the military alone, the cannons weren't firing properly. They couldn't, often the machinery was breaking down. The priests needed the soldiers and the merchants to fill the pulpits. The administrators leaned on the soldiers to carry out their policies and so on. So all of them, while they felt that it is their particular force that was purified, that was the solution, they were always calling on all of the others without admitting it. So they all felt that we are the reason that we are able to stay on this island. But the merchants needed the priests to convince the population that this is more valuable than that and reduce the prices of things. Right? And the price of labor. All of them depended on one another. But they depended on one another, but pretended that they didn't. So when they arrived together, so the way that he puts it is that if all of them had arrived on the island in Barbados individually, they would all have been defeated with their force. But the problem is that they arrived together. And even better than arriving together, they could arrive together with their own separate forces that they never admit that they use one another. And because of that, the way he puts it is that they were able to use those forces to spread over the country like a spider web. All of them weak like a web, but together they strangle any other force that was there. So the second part of your question is, how do we do that? So it brings me to something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is problematic. In almost every forum you go to, you will hear at least once, black people need to be united. We need to work together. Yet still, you white Europeans were cussing one another every day, killing one another and so on. But when they came to the island, even though they still didn't like one another, the priest knew that he was too weak to make Jesus come out of the Bible. So he still depended on the soldiers and everybody else to come and make his church worth something, right? So even though they were cussing one another, and it continues today, even though they're cussing one another, they know full well that even if they don't admit it, they depend on one another to be able to control and stay on the island. Which is why the very last slides that I had, the last few, had to do with centers of calculation. Those in Barbados, those same planters and merchants who cuss one another, who would go to the Bridgetown Club, sit down, do the calculations, make the plans, make the decision, get up, drink some rum, cuss one another, go back home. It wasn't like, oh, we got to love one another. And that is something that happens when we have black gatherings. I think we mistake understanding that we have to find a way to work, to act together. We conflate that with thinking that we all have to be in bed together, love one another together. And I think that that's the mistake that we make. And so that's, I think that I'm trying to answer both parts of your question. So I'll leave it there. If you had read the whole thing, I wouldn't go be here talking about it. You read it. Yeah, man.
Sorry, Ding, if you want to go ahead. I thought he posed the question to each of us. Am I right or wrong? All right. To answer the first part of the question, I firmly believe in who paid the piper called the tune. And who pays the piper calls the tune. And in modern Barbados, if I can see certain people rising above me, and I know who's the piper, I pay the piper. And if it is that the piper somehow got moral convictions, and I is this politician with every moral in the world, and I have to look after my people, I will just pay the opposition and those campaign donations, etc., millions of dollars of it, don't fool yourself, will go to the next fella because you do not want to play the tune that I want you to do. So in all the examples, whether it's youth scars, etc., a group of fellas have the ability to pay the piper, and therefore their tune is played. I think it is, I'm sorry to make it sound too simple, but I think it happens all the time. You will change your allegiance tomorrow if you're not getting what you want, and they have greater power to change their allegiance if it is people are not doing what they want. That's the first part of the answer, and that's what I believe. The second part is that you always ask us just now, what is our something power?
No, he was asking how.
No, you ask us each time.
Your favorite power.
Your favorite power.
Your favorite force.
Favorite force. I like that. And I thought of it because I thought you were going to point at me at some point.
Yeah, cause you're so
My favorite force is that design, the development, the research, the development, and then you go back, you do a prototype, and then you go and come again. In other words, research and develop, and then repeat the process once you evaluate the weaknesses and go again. In other words, I honestly believe that Barbadians, through education, etc., are very strong in paper. You write a paper, go to university, write a paper, get a degree, we get the A because of a paper, but not for practical application, not for beating the pavement, going out there, looking and realizing what's the situation, and coming and go again. You asked me a question that I thought I had answered in my presentation. What am I doing in my group to try to change the narrative? I just told you all that I am implementing a savings society, something called a thrift project with the public workers. I am using 300 young people. There are 400 Landship members, in which approximately 100 are adults. 300 young people. We are going to put bank accounts into them. When they perform, we are going to drop in a little $10 or $20. But the important thing is we are going to do a 100-day challenge. And I'm going to tell you something that nobody knows other than my directors. I hope I don't get flogged for it. But the challenge is really, they don't know it, that it is a $1,000 end of the year challenge. And the 100-day challenge is really to save $300. Can you save $300 in 100 days? And if you perform and think we put $10 or $20 in your kitty, etc., and when that 100 days is done, you got to sit down in here to go over that course in financial literacy, the importance of it, and we are going to praise the hell out of those who made that $300 in that 100 day, and then we're going to say, now that we took a week off and break, and we have recognized where we went wrong, and we recognize how we can do better, we got another 100 days to do better. Before they look around, 300 days can bring us to Christmas and New Year's Day. I got it planned, the entire award ceremony. We're going to do that along with the Kwanzaa event on New Year's Day. And we are going to make a big deal of all those who hit their $1,000 challenge. That, pardon me? I just said the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union.
No, she mean this bank. She mean this bank.
I am sure he will before we leave here. Let me say this. We have to change the culture. I know the children are excited. I can see how excited. I just told you, I tell you, Landship trending and I'm riding it all the way to the bank. Right? That is the reality. So this is not guesswork. I ain't talking like this because I want to sound pretty. I'm passionate because it must happen. You will never stand up and say to me, use the Landship, right? So why is it when I ain't got no savings society no more? It makes me feel bad. It takes a damper out of my lectures. So I fixing it. I hope it's clear. That is what I'm doing in my group. What I want is I've looked at any good business person, etc., look at the loopholes, the errors, the possibility things that could go around. No person can do no child bank account without the permission of their parent. The thing that could go wrong is with poor people parents halfway through the thing. Wait, you got $400 sitting down there and I want 2 hams in the place now. And that is because I can't order parents, I cannot give them the same motivation, I cannot bring them into these financial literacy sessions where we're going to hype them up. I can't do that. So my question to you all was, how can I fix it? How can I help that? Please.
Yeah, time is.
But I hope I answer your question. That's what I am doing in my thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would love to get suggestions from you because they haven't. No, I could tell you. I could tell you what is in my mind. I could tell you that we went to India, and when we went to India, the government tell we carry young people, and when we carry young people, the older people, they're real vexed. You see young people come back real excited and dancing and thing, and we got the UNESCO thing, etc. The older ones are about here so for 25 years doing that shit for free. And how dare you? I had a members meeting and I had to lay down the law. You know, it's a democratic thing, but I still had to lay down the law. This is the BLA money. This is the Ministry of Culture money. And if they ask for young people they will get. You better embrace them. You better big them up and better not make them feel as though they did something wrong in this place. And I had to lay down the law. And then I said, as a business person, what can tear a company apart can do what? Flip it 180. And it can, watch what I'm saying. I said, since y'all are so passionate about a little trip, we will put a committee together to look at trips and doing trip on a regular basis, maybe every other year. And in trying to figure out how to get these people to do trips every other year, the committee, which is it's really a committee to empower members and so forth, the committee said to me, Mr. World, we figure out the painful thing I'm trying to go Ghana, that's enough headache. A cruise is the answer. No security problems, no accommodation, this blah, blah, blah. We're going to call the cultural agencies in the different islands we can stop at. Leave Barbados. When we get to island, the cultural agency going to say, yes, you can perform here at this camp. Yes, we could go through this town and do a lot of shit. Yes, and this is how we're going to beat it. How much money we looking at? About $1,500 or so per person. How am I going to get this money? And I figured, I'm not saying this is it, because if these children work so hard to save $1,000, I ain't too sure that it should be what soap on a cruise. But so far, the idea is that those who make the threshold can get on the list to be part of the team to go on the cruise. This is only one idea right now. I don't think that is good enough. I think that if we're building a sustainable and whatnot society, that it needs to be something that grows, that create for the future, so that we have assets, so that we can look back 10 years from now and say, you know what, Lansha ain't needing a handout for nobody, not even government. Be rich.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can go on this the whole evening, but we have a program here. We still have 1 or 2 other things to do. And it's very interesting. We know we will talk. We can stay till 10, 12 o'clock. But still, we still have to continue with the program. We have now, we have Mr. Tamon Howard, who is going to do some spoken word for us. Is he still here? Tamon, come on, please. You want a microphone?
You already said that just for the MC, so I didn't know.
Did you need a MC? You need a microphone? No, this one, the one right there in the table. I can get it. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for Mr. Timon here, Howard.
Yeah, good evening, all. I was saying here that this spot is just for the MC, so I didn't want to run into the same trouble as
Right, that
your
is
brother on
sacred.
this side. Right, so I can stay across, more central.
Sacred.
Independent, not on this side and that side. Anyway, this has been a vibrant discussion, and I'm grateful to be here. Appreciate all who have spoken so far. Give thanks to all of you. Yeah. Sometimes as I think about who we are as a people, I wonder who we are, who we want to be, what holds us back. And our journey has been one of resistance and rebellion, and one that has been striving towards freedom, and what that means on many levels. What that means to be emancipated, what it means to be self-determinate and determining. And sometimes I think deeply about the anthem, our national anthem. And I wonder, what exactly is it that our pride springs from? Is it still that seed our brave forefathers sown long ago, or did we uproot that tree and instead plant our own seeds of naivety into mistaken plots of greed we thought would produce grass any more green? Does the pride of nationhood still bind our hearts from coast to coast? Nationhood, collective action, cooperation. Does that still bind our hearts from coast to coast, or are we instead bound by the vice grip of foreign aid? Remaining there, ragdolled, ransacked, insufficiently self-sufficient, and held for self-sourced ransom. By heavy hands we hoped would heave us. Heave us, please just give us a push beyond the threshold of economic activity we think we can produce on our own, and then release us. Ease us. And allow us to support ourselves. See, we take that big push, but for all of our affectionately regurgitated friends to many satellites of none, I think over the way we've come to forget and make and neglect our father of independence. Staring right past his sons and daughters all for too long, we've been blinded. Trying to catch our lucky stars in the distance. Much times being drawn to foreign economic investment like house moths to light bulbs, indebting ourselves to nations keeping us in check, giving us no props except to prop up on first world coattails like the cloth of the enterprising people we possess can't be cut, stitched, and draped to hold the shape of a vivacious economy far greater than that of the colonizer's legacy, and said that suit them. It's almost as though we forget about pride in industry. It's almost as though we forget about pride and industry. See, we are not so far removed from the days of Portuguese exploration and English colony. So, sometimes I think deeply about our anthem. When the rock is a gem seemingly not worth holding and knowing just molding to metropolitan, what is our pride from? Does the lands which we sing, the fields and hills which are now our very own, maybe they are beyond recall, not for long standing, but all but abandonment. Because we simply choose to neglect them, and we forget them, or focus drifting to the ships docking in harbor and the planes coming to land on narrow strips, or focus being drawn to the tourists coming to appreciate our nation more than we do, yet still we sing that these fields and hills beyond recall are now our very own. But how much of them we own? How much of this island is our own? As I think about the anthem, and I look, it's clear to see that this island is becoming more and more of a first world Westerner's home and less of a West Indian's own.
We could tell them that you got to hear thing.
And sometimes,
We could tell them just
sometimes,
I'll say.
I think
We could
deeply
tell them you got to hear.
about the anthem.
You ready? You done? Oh.
And I wonder, I wonder. Who are we and who do we wish to be? What holds us back? Tell me, do we long for freedom? How is it we run from true education? Don't you know that's the way to free ourselves from the shackles of ill indoctrination through generations, worldly influences and distractions from our purpose, negativity and doubt that would diminish our worth and stop us succeeding. Stop us succeeding. But may we unite and find the strength they stole in cutting us off from our mother and each other. Mentally we were lost. Spirit and truth will search for you and hold your hand, guide you home. If you're not stubborn and you listen, you see where you belong. From there decide for ourselves where it is that we want to go. United fronts won't be confused nor crushed by any old foe. A brighter future may be far, but still it's where we will go. Luminous and dark like starlit sky, balled up, rolled into a globe, and each one put his weight into the struggle, standing to be counted, caring not only for himself and his, but all creation around him. All creation around him. Blessed good night.
Let's hear it from Mr. Timon Howard. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot of young people with the spoken word poetry and so on performing these days. Very good. Now, the members of the Cornerstone Lodge are very generous. I've benefited from their generosity on more than one occasion. Almost every time they saw me, I came to Lodge, they would give me a certificate or something, a lot of things that I got from them. And this evening is no exception. They have the presenters, and we're going to have some small tokens of appreciation to be given to our panelists and, of course, our distinguished lecturer. But we'll start with the panelists. We'll start with Brother Clyde Cox, who will present. This is our Right Worshipful Past Master, Clyde Cox. What are you doing here? Let's have a round of applause for Brother Cox, although he didn't do nothing yet. And he will make a presentation to Colonel Worrell from the Barbados Landship Association.
You're on to something.
Mr. Worrell, sir.
It's Colonel Worrell, you're right.
Sorry, Colonel Worrell.
It's a secret. I don't like to utilize it, but that's what they decided because of the growth and work.
But you had it great by your hair, as far as I can see, so.
On behalf of the New York Club, I want to present you with this token of our appreciation to your valuable contribution to Black history this year. Thank you very much, sir.
Next, we're going to have another of our distinguished past masters, Brother Athlone McCollin, and he's going to present a token to Matthew Clark, Mr. Matthew Clark, who gave such a wonderful presentation. Online viewers? So if you want. Oh, please use the microphone when you speak to the online viewers so that they can hear.
On behalf of the New York Club, we want to present you with this token of appreciation and wish that you would carry on the work that you have started as a young man and it will transcend into the youth of Barbados.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're going to have still another prize presentation, another past master, Brother Stephen Holder is going to make a presentation to Brother Rodney Mears.
Thanks, Brother Mears. It is indeed a burden to present you this small token of appreciation for your insightful work down here today. And I hope that
Take out the microphone.
you'll be able to present yourself for part two, because I'm sure that many of us here would like to hear what else you have plans for us.
I just want to say I will take this as also my birthday gift, as it was on Tuesday.
Your birthday too?
Oh, you should have all a bashment to.
And last but not least, we have a presentation here to our distinguished lecturer, Dr. What's his name? Dr. Murray. That's right. I'm just kidding. Dr. Murray, you will get a presentation from Honorary Past Grandmaster Schofield Moore. Mike, please, Mike.
You guys want him? I'm not sure we can echo.
Right, on behalf of Cornerstone Lord Number 14, it's a privilege to present you with this token of appreciation.
Thank you very much.
And we would ask you to keep the good work up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that more or less nearly almost completes our program for this evening, except for a very special event. A very nervous looking brother, Mario Jemmett. He's going to come and present the vote of thanks to all these wonderful people. I don't know if we can get any thanks, but we'll see.
Right Worshipful Brother Gilmore Goddard, Deputy Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the Caribbean, Grand Lodge officers past and present, Worshipful Masters past and present, Grand Associate Patron Brother Rodney Mears of the Ridgey Grand Chapter, Order of the Eastern Stars Prince Hall Affiliation, Grand Chapter officers past and present, brothers and sisters, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As we draw our celebrations of Black History Month to a close today, I stand before you with a heart full of gratitude. It is both an honor and a privilege to deliver this vote of thanks as we reflect on this year's theme, Rooted in Faith, Rise in Freedom. First and foremost, we would like to thank the Spring Memorial Secondary School Steel Band for their rendition that they gave at the beginning of the proceedings. We also like to acknowledge that with God in our presence, all things are possible. In that spirit, we extend our deepest appreciation to Bishop Marlon Jones and the congregation of the Mount Pisgah Spiritual Baptist Church for their generosity of spirit and for leading us in prayer on this occasion. We look forward to continuing to work with you as we seek to uplift and empower our communities. Thank you once again, and may God continue to bless and guide you all. Deepest gratitude to our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Derek Murray, whose presentation challenged us to reflect, to learn, and to recommit ourselves to preserving and celebrating our rich heritage. Your words have not only informed us, but have also inspired us to carry forward the legacy of those who came before us. We wish to acknowledge the invaluable contributions of our panelists, Brother Matthew Clark, one of our very own Brother Rodney Mears, and Brother Wayne Worrell of the Barbados Landship Association, whose perspectives enrich this evening's discussion and deepen our understanding of the themes explored. Your insights and reflections on the interconnectedness of our African heritage makes today's gathering not only informative, but deeply inspiring. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and for reminding us of our powerful threads that bind us all to our roots. Heartfelt thanks to two outstanding young men who truly enriched this evening's Black History Lecture, Mr. Malachi Hope and Mr. Timon Howard. Through your powerful spoken words presentation, you did more than perform. Your courage to speak truth, your command of language, and your passion for culture inspired us all. They have demonstrated that the voices of our young people are not only relevant, but essential in shaping our present and future. We thank you sincerely for sharing your gifts, your time, and your powerful artistry with us this evening. May you continue to use your voices to uplift, educate, and transform. Special thanks are also extended to Brother Oriel Sue, Worshipful Master of Prince Hall Memorial No. 1, for facilitating the live stream of today's event. Through your efforts, our message was shared beyond these walls and carried across the borders to audiences around the globe. Lastly, I thank each and every one of you who joined us here today. Your presence and participation are what truly made this event a success. Let us leave here encouraged by the rich history and culture we share, and strengthened by the knowledge that we are indeed all connected. As we conclude our celebrations, let us carry forward the message we have heard and the connections we have made. Together, we will continue to celebrate and honor our identities while fostering understanding, love, and unity. On behalf of the President and the Committee of the New Hope Club, thank you once again for your generosity and support. May we all continue to uplift and inspire one another. Thank you once again.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother Gemma, for that. No, afterthought. Go ahead. Go. I can go and get a drink to drown my sorrows. You go ahead. No afterthought business, please.
It's not an afterthought. It was a last minute thought.
Oh, okay. Yes, I had drinks over there. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to more or less to the end of this program, but the fun will now start. I understand that there are lots of rings and samosas and other goodies. I can't remember the other goodie. Huh?
Yeah, before we go, I just wanted to say a personal thank you to my nephew Tremaine, who made all the arrangements for me for this evening, but also came in and filled in where he had to fill in a song, man, unexpectedly. So
yeah, well, it's very good as MC to have so much assistance from the panel and other people. It's very heartwarming.
Yes,
but yes, we have drinks out there. The drinks, all sorts of drinks. We have samosas and so on. Very competitive prices, very, very good prices. So go and enjoy yourself. And when you finish, get home safely. God bless you. I know I'm going to get. I was going to get.
Make sure you don't walk over the mic. I think it's 2 pieces.